I just finished watching this crazy ass movie called The Big Four. So it starts off with this kid being taken to this orphanage. Think everything's all fine and dandy, right? As soon as they close the door, you find out it's not really an orphanage at all. In actuality, it's like a dungeon, a place to extract kids' organs. I'm like, what the fuck? So I guess they're supposed to be giving these organs to like older people that are like rich and within a company or whatever like that. So you got this guy by the name Mr. Bob. He's supposed to be part of this process. And the kid is running into this dude named Paylor, who was their next test subject. But all of a sudden, right before they're about to do the operation, Mr. Bob turns on the people in the skybox and duffs everybody out. Turns out he was in disguise. This is a dude by the name of Topan. Topan starts kicking ass. Then one of the nurses starts kicking ass. Turns out this chick is named Alpha. Then she asks Paylor if he's got this lighter or whatever like that. But the lighter also has a button on it, so it's like a lighter bomb or something. I'm like, what the fuck? This is like the first 15 seconds of the movie. So then they cause a bunch of ruckus and mayhem. But then they get to the front door, it gets stuck. All of a sudden, they got this guy by the name of Django who's been doing this like meditation practices and whatnot. He's like, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be sniping niggas. So he's sniping dudes left and right. And then Topaz finishes the rest of them niggas off and they get up out of there and they save the kids. So they're kind of like assassins but doing good deeds, I guess. So Topaz, Alpha, Django, and Paylor are what we consider the Big Four. Led by their mentor who happens to pick them up in the car, Mr. Petris. Now, Mr. Petris is what I guess you could say is kind of like a father figure, but he taught them everything they know. Now, all four of them are basically like family, whether they're brother and sister or adopted brothers and sisters. Bottom line is they're some type of family. The thing is, his real family has a daughter by the name of Dina. Now, while the Big Four are pretty much assassins, with the exception of Paylor because they use him as bait. Dina, however, is actually a cop. So the situation is, Mr. Petris is about to retire. He wants to go to this island by the name of Bercy and just like run a hotel or something like that. Now, out of all four of them, Topaz is the only person that knows about this dude by the name of Hassan. Hassan is actually the uncle. Dina is more connected to Hassan because he's actually like the police chief. But Petris told Topaz, like, look, if I should die, you know what I'm saying, make sure you watch out to Dina. So afterwards, he talks to Dina, and they really have like a little on and off relationship because the thing is, Petris doesn't really come to like her segments and situations like that when it comes to police and task force, and you can understand why. But the next day, she's about to be announced as a full-fledged policewoman. So while this is going down, Petris is at the house, but there's some lady comes over there and gives him some flowers or whatever like that. This guy on the motorcycle was delivering the flowers, you know what I'm saying? He had his helmet on and whatnot. But once the lady left, this is where Petris got caught slipping. Apparently, the guy that delivered the flowers is some dude that he knew from the past. Potentially somebody he trained years ago. He ends up having this knife battle. Petris is done deal dead as shit. Meanwhile, Dina's depressed because his father never showed up to the ceremony. Topaz goes over to the house later on because he thinks something's off and then he sees him laying there dead as shit. Dina finally ends up going by the house suspecting something's wrong. And what does she see? She sees her father dead as shit and she sees Topaz standing over her. But he never turned around. All he seen was his hat. She tried to shoot him and he dipped off. So obviously she's convinced somebody in a hat killed her dad. Which we know is bullshit, but she don't know that. So we get to a point, 3 years goes by, right? All she's been doing is like completing a whole bunch of cases, and bottom line, she's still sticking to her dad's case, trying to figure out what happened, who did what. And one of her upstanding officers is like, yo, you're doing too much work. You need to take a vacation or something. Either that or partner up with somebody to do the rest of this work. So obviously she wasn't going to do that. So she's like, you know what? She pretty much forced her hand to take a vacation. So she's going through her dad's old stuff, and then she's looking at all these little vacation things. She thinks about someplace he always wanted to go. Then she checked one of the back of his pictures or whatever and seen these brochures for Bercy Island. So she gets the idea of like, you know, maybe I'll find out something there. But then she sees this picture of him with like 4 other kids, and we already know who those kids are, but bottom line, she don't know. But one of them kids has the same hat on. So now she's thinking to herself, yeah, I am going to take a vacation. Then all of a sudden, we see this one place being completely murked. There's a bunch of niggas dead as shit, led by this crazy lady named Alvo, my bad. But really led by this crazy motherfucker named Antonio Savidi. So you're thinking to yourself, what does got to do with anything except some random carnage? I'll explain that in a minute. So basically, she ends up taking a trip out of Bercy Island, but she specifically wants to go to the Villa Paradisini Hotel, which nobody goes to. It's pretty much abandoned or whatever like that, but that's where Topaz is staying right now. Yeah, 3 years later, he's just in there chilling by himself. He happens to see Dina coming up the road. He's like, what the fuck? So the thing is, he really doesn't want to check her in, but she's being persistent, so he's like, all right, I'll get you a room upstairs. And then these 2 other guys come out of nowhere while she's checking in. But the crazy thing is, these dudes are after Dina. I'm like, what the fuck are they after her for? But Topaz ends up fighting them off, whipping their candy ass. He still got it. She's been trying to ask him questions, but Topaz been ducking and dodging around that shit. Then all of a sudden she finds a picture of Petris. And then he tells her like, yeah, that was my father figure too. But he doesn't tell her everything though, you know what I'm saying? So she knows she came to the right place. Something's up, you know what I'm saying? So Topaz is going to take her over to Django's spot. Now Django at this point in his life, he's supposed to be this Buddhist monk or whatever like that. He permits violence. Like he takes like these herbal medicines and stuff like that. He's all about peace. He tries to make some herbal tea for her, but when she starts drinking it, you realize that she drunk the wrong herbs. And she started spazzing out, seeing all types of shit. So then we go back to the hotel, and then we find out Antonio and the boys are over there. So we like, okay, the people that is sent over there were from his crew. But my thing is, why do they want Dina? So basically it comes out of a situation where they try and get Dina to calm down, and all of a sudden Paylor comes out the blue. He dyed his hair, got gold grills, you know what I'm saying? He was gangster shit. But he still can't fight worth a damn. He got this golden gun. I'm like, nigga, who you think you are, 007? Then all of a sudden Antonio and the boys find a location. They come through like, yo, what's good? Aloe is that bitch, I swear. Every time you see her, she's about to bring a fucking rocket launcher to the party. I mean, we seen her at the beginning. She got hands, but bottom line is, every point from this now in, rocket launcher time. So then the big fight breaks out and all that. So throughout the fight, we found out Antonio was actually the one that killed Mr. Petris. You know, Dina's dad. And since he's here, he's basically trying to finish off him, or her, and everybody else. Now, even Antonio's getting orders from somebody else. We don't know who exactly. But Paylor and Dina were able to make a distraction somehow, and they was able to get away. So Dina at this point is pissed off at Topaz because she keeps thinking he's lying. But Paylor tries to calm the whole situation down. She's like, look, man, I'll take you to Alpha. She never lies about anything. Because, you know, we was thinking the whole time, like, what the fuck is Alpha at? So seeing as though these niggas is outnumbered, Topaz and Django got to go to this one spot over in the Boogaloo. They end up talking to this guy named El Salvador. Bottom line, whether he could be trusted or not, this nigga got a lot of guns. Then Topaz remembers something that his father told right before he died. He was talking about somebody named Cervanto. So we're like, who the fuck is that? Well, anyway, El Salvador gives them the information about Cervanto. We're like, okay, some little kid. And he gives us like some paperwork, some background information. So we're like, all right, cool. So we're like, is that the guy that really killed Perez? I mean, Petris, you know his name. So then Paylor and Dina finally get to Alpha's location, and guess what she's doing? She's dressed like a mermaid singing songs. It's like totally outside of her character, you know what I'm saying? But then we find out she's still getting weapons and ammunition from her grandpa or whatever like that. So she's doing this for something else, and I'm like, okay, this sounds more like Alpha's character. That's disguised out in the open, right? So obviously she loves Paylor, but then she's looking over at Dina like, what the fuck is she doing here? Then she tells her the real how everyone thing went down. And now she knows that Topaz did not kill her father. Now in between this, Antonio hired some extra help. It was like these 5 other guys along with this dude named Checo. Now Checo finds out that Topaz killed his brother. He gives this crazy dialogue about how he'll cut his balls off and do it in separate angles and then swallow them whole. And I was like, what the fuck? Even Antonio was looking at him like, dude, I got Topaz. Fuck that, yo. you calm down and get everybody else. Yeah, some one-eyed dude with this crazy-ass blonde mohawk, yo. He's just talking shit. So anyway, those are the dudes that run into Paylor and Dina and Alpha. They was out there cooking niggas as usual. But Paylor saw these 2 kids. He was trying to get these kids to safety. So while he was doing that, Dina and Alpha was causing business, giving business. All of a sudden, Aloe comes out of nowhere once again with a rocket launcher, like niggas. Then they try to close the door and shit like that was gonna do something. Dina's pretty much unconscious at this point. Topaz and Django come in time to save her or whatever like that, and everybody gets on this boat. But while that's going on, Paylor is getting stalked out by Checo, and they end up kidnapping Paylor. While they're on the boat, Antonio uses a phone to make a phone call to tell him like, hey, meet me at such where it all started. Basically, they're gonna be keeping Paylor back at the hotel. Now, where everybody else is on the boat trying to air out their own grievances and whatnot, they still got a bunch of weapons on the boat. And Alpha had made this bomb. She calls it the Lucifer Fart 3000. I'm like, what the fuck? This thing is very potent. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So anyway, they gotta come up with some plan to try to get Paylor back. And then like Topaz and Dina end up having this little tender moment because she finally realized that he was not the one that killed her dad. And they split a beer together. Next day, it's time for the beef. Alpha was able to get Django his rifle back, which he hadn't shot in the last 3 years. So, you know, he need to get some practice again. Next day, they walking off the boat, slow motion, time for the beef. You know how we do slow motion stuff. Antonio's on the phone with a boss again, and he's getting tired of him talking like shit, whatever like that. He's like, fuck this. Paylor's still alive for the time being. They line up outside ready to shoot niggas because all of a sudden they see a car coming through. They was blasting away at the car, of course nobody was in it. There with the back seat, there was a curtain drawn over. They opened the curtain, and guess what? It's the Lucifer Fart 3000 bomb, and then it wipes out everybody on the floor. No, literally, it wiped out everybody that was anywhere near it. Even the people in the building were just blown back. And it was time for the melee to shooting and all that. So let me bottom line it. You get the one-on-one between Topaz and Antonio. You got one-on-one Dina going against Checo. You got Alpha fighting Aloe, who once again comes in with the goddamn rocket launcher. But then they said, enough of that shit. Give me the hands. He was like, all right, bet, run them. Django comes in to save the day. He throws his own rifle into the rocket launcher and blows herself the fuck up. Dina somehow reverses the shotgun and blows Checo's head the fuck off. And it gets to a situation where Antonio is about to chop off Paylor's head, but then Topaz is like, yeah, Cervanto. So basically, Cervanto is basically Antonio's name. So he's got all these little aliases, but it's all the same person. He was so distracted by that Paylor was somehow able to get out the ropes. And Topaz still had the knife in his hand that he was stabbed with earlier in the fight, took it out and threw it right at his heart. Antonio falls out the window, done deal dead as shit. So Dina basically says she gives a word. She's not going to turn him into the police and all this other stuff. But then she says she knows it's not y'all fault, all this other stuff, right? Topaz kisses her. But while he was kissing her, he handcuffed her to the banister and was like, you ain't getting us though. Sorry about that. But then he gives her his dad's hat. And then before he leaves, he's like, check your hat. And then they dip off. Inside the hat was a key. Probably a key to the handcuffs. So there you go. Now the big four end up going to this spot in the woods where they just like pretty much covered up something. They opened up the tarp and everything, and it's just a car that they had. So they all get in this car and they dip out. So then we get to this scene with Hassan. Now remember I told you Hassan was like the police chief? And he's talking to this lady. He says something about, yeah, the big four escaped or something like that. And I was like, how the fuck did Hassan know about all this situation? I'm like, he wasn't supposed to know all this. But he's telling this lady like to make sure that my daughter's not hurting anyway or whatever like that. And she's like, you wouldn't be able to stop me if I could. I'm like, oh shit. But then we're thinking to ourselves, who is this one-eyed lady? We're like, where does she come from? But apparently she says she has unfinished beef with Topaz. I'm like, with what? What happened? And that's how the freaking movie ended. I'm like, what? You can't end it on a cliffhanger. I need a part 2. The Big 4+1 or some shit. I don't know, something. The Big 4 on Netflix. Check it out.